In today's video, we're going to be talking about per stirpes and per capita. What are they and what do they mean? My name's Gregory Singleton. I'm an estate planning and probate attorney with Signature Law. Signature Law is an estate planning and probate law firm that serves the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota alike. Just a reminder, if you like today's video, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It actually really helps support the channel. Also, two caveats before we get going. First of all, these videos are for educational purposes only. I am not giving legal advice. And second of all, we're going to be talking about Minnesota law here, specifically in this video. So if you live in another jurisdiction, make sure to talk to an attorney in that jurisdiction before you plan your estate. So here's the situation. Congratulations, you're a grandparent. You've got 3 kids, they're starting to have children of their own. You want to make sure that if one of your children predeceases you, that the grandchildren are taken care of. It's a good thing to do. How do you do that, though? Do you have to rewrite your will every single time one of your children has a child, every time a new child is brought into this world? Luckily, no, we don't have to do that. We can use a shortcut, and those shortcuts are Latin phrases called per stirpes and per capita. Let's start with per stirpes. Per stirpes is a Latin phrase that means by the branch or by roots. Essentially, what it says, if you give a gift to person A per stirpes, and person A has children at the time that you die, and person A predeceases you, that means any share that you designated going to person A is going to their children. So let's look at some examples of how this works in the real world, and then we'll also touch on per capita and what that means, and then we'll go over some of the finer points. In each of these examples, you have 3 children, child A, child B, child C. Child A has 0 kids of their own, child B has 3 children of their own, and child C has 2 children of their own. In example 1, very simple, you predecease all of your children. You gave to each of your children per stirpes. The result of that is that child A, child B, and child C each get of even 1/3 share of your estate. Very straightforward and simple. Now let's say, go to the next example, and say that child B predeceases you. In that case, the result is that child A and child C each get 1/3 of the estate. However, child B's 1/3 share of the estate goes to equal shares to their children. So each of your grandchildren gets 1/3 of child B's 1/3 of the estate, which means that each of the grandchildren from child B get 1/9 of the estate. In example 3, we're going to look at something a little more complex. In this case, child B and child C both predecease you. And the result of this is if you gave to each of your children equal shares per stirpes, child A is going to get 1/3 of the estate still. Child B's children are again going to get 1/3 of child B's 1/3 of the estate. And child C's children are each going to get 1/2 of child C's 1/3 of the estate. Note that in per stirpes, the children of child B and child C are not treated equally. And the theory behind this is that if you gave a gift of $90,000 to child B, and then child B dies a week later, theoretically, they're probably going to give all their assets in equal shares to each of their children, meaning that if they receive $90,000, each of their kids are going to get $30,000. Same thing with child C. Child C just happened to have fewer children than child B, therefore child C's children are going to get a larger share. For the next example, we're going to look at per capita. Now, per capita, we're just going to touch on this. It means in Latin, by the heads or for each head. And essentially what we're going to do is make things equal and even at the grandchild level. So in this situation, again, child B and child C predecease you. The result of this is child A is still going to get their 1/3 share. Now, child B and child C together have 5 children. You have 5 grandchildren from each of those lines. So what we do is we group child B and child C's estate together so they get 2/3 of your estate. And then we share that equally amongst all the grandchildren. So they get 1/5 of the 2/3 share, which is 2/15 share of the entire estate. Now, there's a couple general things I want to talk about so that we really understand what per stirpes and what per capita means and what their implications are about using them in your estate plan. And the first thing is I want to talk about is that they are statutorily defined by each state. Different states may have different definitions for what the effect of per stirpes is or what the effect of per capita is. There are several different controlling definitions out there beyond what I've talked about in this video. So if you're in another state, first thing, make sure you talk to an estate planning attorney who understands the concepts before you go to plan your estate and just willy-nilly use Latin phrases like per stirpes and per capita. Second, if you're in Minnesota and let's say you give to your child Susan per stirpes, but then you move to another state, does that mean that the definition of per stirpes changes? Probably not. And the reason for that is if a properly drafted will is going to have a choice of law. And it will say, if you're in Minnesota, when you draft and execute your will, it'll say this will is governed by the laws of the state of Minnesota. Then let's say you move to a different state and someone challenges the will about what per stirpes mean because that different state has a different definition of per stirpes. Well, that state will apply Minnesota law, including the definition of what per stirpes is when interpreting your will. So you don't necessarily need to redo everything. Third, along the lines of it's statutorily defined, is that some states prefer per stirpes over per capita. Most states prefer per stirpes. Some states have an inclination for using per capita. So if you're talking with an attorney and they start drafting your will, they may go on autopilot and put in per capita instead of per stirpes or vice versa when you wanted the other one. So make sure you read carefully about what your attorney is doing. The next thing about per capita and per stirpes that you should know is these can be defined in the document. For example, the statute may say per stirpe means A, B, C, D, but you don't want it to mean that. You want it to mean D, E, F, G. You can, in your document, define per stirpes means D, E, F, G, and that will control. So what's a real-world example of that? For instance, you could say that per stirpes includes if my grandchild is due a share of my estate, not just my child, but my grandchild, and they have great-grandchildren, or my great-grandchildren, they have children of their own, their share will pass to the great-grandchildren. Generally, by definition, per stirpes only goes from the child level that predeceases you to the grandchild, or from the person you give it to the next generation down. But you can include multiple generations in your definition of per stirpes, and that's totally fine. The second thing to note is that if you disinherit someone, let's say you disinherit one of your grandchildren because they go to mime school, and you also put in that something going to their parent is given to them per stirpes, the disinheritance will control because the specific controls over the general. The final thing I want to talk about is you don't have to use per stirpes and per capita. There's a lot of various options out there. You could give pro rata to your children. So if one of your 3 children predeceases you, their share is going to go to the other children, whether they have kids or not. You can give only to your surviving children in a variety of shares. Similar pro rata, but if one of your kids doesn't survive you, then all their assets are going to be held by the surviving children. You can do contingencies. You give to Bob, but if Bob doesn't survive you, you don't want it to go to his kids, maybe it goes over to Sue. For instance, you might want Bob's share to go to Bob's spouse. Remember, if you're doing that, put down goes to Bob's spouse if they're married at the time of Bob's death. In that case, Bob's spouse will be able to use those assets to take care of the kids without giving to the children. And finally, remember there's other options other than giving to kids and grandkids and great-grandchildren. You can give to friends, you can give to charities, you can give to spouses of children. There's a whole host of variety of options that you can do. Really research what you want to do some self-reflection, and make sure that your estate plan reflects the legacy that you want to give. So that's my take on per stirpes and per capita. I hope you liked today's video. If you did like today's video, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps support the channel. We do a new video every other Wednesday. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below, or if you have a request about a video you'd like to see, put them in the comments, or just send me an email. My email is going to pop up at the end of this. Otherwise, until next time, this is Gregory Singleton with Signature Law.